tell you how much. That's actually, she's one of my very best friends. Okay. So you're a good friend. So, you're both, your partners.
Julie's a conservation hero. She is amazing in terms of what she has accomplished in her career, the energy she brings. She's an amazing person.
So anyway, I'm gonna get her to come down and talk about this. So she just had a major knee operation. She's not doing very well. Anyway, she wanted me to say hey.
Okay.
And I'd love to get together with you sometime too. When you love me.
My house is up in Southern Pines. So yeah,
Well, I'm a retired landscape architect. I work for all of you. So that's how I met you guys. So we share a lot.
Love to talk about it sometime. Thanks so much.
Good morning, all. A far better day today than tomorrow. I'm especially pleased to have Jeff Marcus with us today because his connection with the Lumbees, our neighbors, becomes something that has wonder-filled. The intriguing thing about the Lumbees, as opposed to most American tribes, is that they were never moved off their property. Now, they don't have a contiguous, well-marked area yet. Tribal recognition will do that, we hope. But the fact that they could hide in the swamps and the fact that we couldn't drive them off the land has allowed them to keep it. The Nature Conservancy, and some of their material is in the back. If you don't know them, I would like you to. I have 3 favorite charities. They are right there. They are folk who use every dollar we give them for the mission. And so, having somebody from Nature Conservancy, who is our neighbor, he lives north of us in Moore County, he works over there in Pembroke, and he will share with us what Nature Conservancy is doing to not only renew the land, but to restore the land. To put the land with the Lumbees in cooperation and coordination back to what it was for them. Jeffrey, we're pleased to have you. Questions anytime, anytime.
Thank you, Bob. Well, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to know my colleague Hervey McKeever, who's had a long connection to this place, and come here. You're getting a poor substitute having me to talk to you rather than Hervey with his wealth of experience. But Bob, appreciate the invitation and greatly appreciate the support for the Nature Conservancy. It's donors like you who make our work possible, and which is great. So yeah, today I'm here to tell you a little bit about the longleaf pine ecosystem, which we all live within, being here in the Sandhills. And something that I know several of you know, but not everyone all appreciates, is that we live in a pretty special place. I mean, the longleaf pine ecosystem in the Sandhills, this is one of the best places on the planet to experience a fully functioning longleaf pine ecosystem and see many of the plants and animals that can be seen here and nowhere else on Earth. And so this is a really unique and special place. And so I'm going to talk about the Nature Conservancy's work with longleaf and our efforts to collaborate with the Lumbee tribe on doing that. Now, I also need to say up front, I'm not Lumbee. I do not speak for the tribe or represent the tribe. And in fact, one of the key principles of the Nature Conservancy's work with indigenous people is that their story is theirs to tell, that it's not for us to co-opt and tell their story for them. So what I'm going to be talking about is the work that the Nature Conservancy does and how we are engaging and working with the tribe and with our work with longleaf. So as Bob says, jump in with questions anytime. Everyone hear me okay? Actually, do I need the microphone? Okay, yeah, we got it. All right, got it. Okay, so longleaf pine, the distribution. This was the dominant tree throughout the southeastern U.S. Back in the day. Previously covered about 90 million acres. So all the gray, you can see there's some light gray and then darker gray on this map. My mouse isn't showing up so so well on there. But anyway, can point out to you, so basically all this lighter gray, now the darker gray is sort of the regions where longleaf is still occurring, much of it has been lost, but even within there, it's in small patches. Basically, we come down to a low of about 3.4 million acres. There's been concerted effort that we're now up to about 5.2 million acres. But you can see that's less than, about 5% of what was previously there. Native Americans played a significant role in managing longleaf seen throughout this area. Here in North Carolina, the tribes that historically were part of our range include the Tuscarora, the Meherrin, Pee Lumbee, Coharie, and the Waccamaw-Siouan. Of those, Coharie, Lumbee, and Waccamaw-Siouan are the tribes that are probably the most actively still in the landscape and doing work in longleaf pine. So historically, what did it look like? I mean, we don't have pictures from way back in the day. I gathered a few photos from the early 1900s that just show some places that had, where you had these really big trees that were out there across the landscape. The ground cover would have been key. And so what happened to all this longleaf? Well, there was a exploitation of the tree that coincided with an exploitation of the people who were on the landscape. That many African American slaves were put to work in these turpentine orchards, as well as many of the indigenous people that were used to tap these trees. The sap of the tree is very thick and resinous and is used for making, at the time, ships. In the 1800s, ships was the main mode of transportation, and this was critical. The tar, the pitch, the turpentine for waterproofing the ships and the ropes and everything. It was, the British Empire, ruled the world with their navy, and their navy was supplied with a lot of the raw materials that were needed from the forests of the southeastern U.S. And that naval stores industry. But, if you eventually, you can sort of harvest sap from a tree up to a point, but if you keep doing it, keep cutting another side, eventually that tree will die. So we started losing trees there, and then as ships started being replaced with other modes of transportation and the turpentine industry played out, there was large-scale logging. So that was sort of the next cut, is that they would go through and cut a lot of these places like this. If you go to the historical archives in Pinehurst, you can see photos of the original Pinehurst Resort back in the 1900s, and it was all clear cut over. They say you could see from there miles across, because there were no trees left from the type of cutting that was happening on the landscape back then. And then the other element was fire suppression. As we're going to learn today, this is a very fire-dependent forest. Fire is an important and healthy role that it plays, and when you suppress those fires, put them out, the forest becomes overgrown, becomes very thick. It suppresses the ability of the trees to regenerate and all those grasses and wildflowers that depend on it. So that's sort of the bad. Here's what happened to longleaf, but there's been a concerted effort to try and bring some of this back, and a lot of this is done through what's called the America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative. You can see all these stars on the map here represent sort of focal spots where there's a concerted effort and a lot of partners, and you can see the North Carolina Sandhills Conservation Partnership is the group that's in our region. It basically is a collaboration of federal, state, nonprofit, tribal, and other members that are working together to protect longleaf and other resources. So we got a goal. I mentioned we're at about 5 million acres. We want to get back to at least 8 million. It's not what it once was, but it certainly was kind of a key goal. So there's strategies for doing that restoration, encouraging collaboration, and providing funding and different policies to promote this work.
Are those forests set-asides, or are you putting longleaf pines on private property?
It is both. So yes, there's strategies for how do we work with the public lands, with our national wildlife refuges, the national forests. Here locally we have state game lands. The Sandhills Game Land is a key place, 65,000 acres right up the road from us here in Scotland County and in Richmond and other places. So these public lands are important, but also working with the private landowners is key. In North Carolina, more than 90% of the land is owned by private landowners. So if you're going to make a difference at a landscape scale, you need to engage those private landowners and find ways that it makes sense for them and for the person who has to make a living off their land and not just
How do you make it make sense?
So there's a number of different ways. There's some cost share programs that help where the government will provide some additional money that, if one of the reasons why people don't plant longleaf, they plant loblolly pines because loblolly pines will grow quicker, can grow more densely, and you'll make your money a little bit sooner. But with some incentive payments from the government, it might offset the cost of planting some of those longleaf, incentivize them to do that. Other programs that provide help and support for doing some of the controlled burning and other activities. And some of it is through just the help and technical guidance. A lot of people, letting people enjoy wildlife, hunting, fishing, or just seeing wildlife or doing good. But they need some advice, they need some support, they need, that kind of thing. And so that's another element is providing people that can work with those private landowners, give them the advice and the information that they need to do the work that they want to do. Yes, sir.
We have a lot of pines. Would you know if we have any longleafs growing?
I just pulled up. I need to look around the place when I'm here. I'm seeing a loblolly pine out the door, but I'm sure there are some longleaf. Maybe once maybe we'll do a field trip once this talk wraps up. We'll poke our heads out and see.
Can you tell by the length of the needle?
Yeah, so a longleaf, those needles would be like 10 to 12 inches long, longer as it would apply, as opposed to the loblolly is about half. They look like a big cheerleader pom-pom at the end of the branch, big puffy pom-pom. There's some differences in the bark and such. We'll see some pictures of it and can point some of that out to you as well.
Two young ones right down here, if you go across the bridge, you'll see them over on the right-hand side of it.
Perfect. I'd be surprised if there weren't longleaf around here. Okay, so what do we know about that longleaf life history? So this starts off as a little seed. This thing here, it actually looks like a maple seed. In fact, it kind of twirls like a helicopter when it falls out of that pine cone, hits the ground, and it needs a bare seed bed. I remember that it talked about the importance of fire. What the fire does is it clears away all that leaf litter and debris and things, so it allows the seed a place to actually get and germinate. And so this is that young seedling that's getting started. And it enters, unique from other trees, it has something called a grass stage. So it's actually growing down before it grows up, because for a year to up to 2, 3, or 4 years, it's actually putting a deep taproot into the ground, an adaptation to these sandy soils, these poor soils where they need to go further to find nutrients and water. And that's something that makes the longleaf much more resistant to things like hurricanes. They won't blow over as well. They're stronger than other trees. So you see something that looks like a tuft of grass there, that's actually a tree, the longleaf growing in the grass stage. And it's going to have the rocket stage, what's called, because it's going to actually shoot up and grow very quickly, because that's when they're the most vulnerable to fire. And then in a mature forest, it looks something like this, and then eventually you actually get to old growth trees where at the tops can kind of get broken out and they look sort of a little bit gnarled and older. And in fact, we have the world's oldest living longleaf pine tree that's known up in Southern Pines on Weymouth Woods State Park. There's a tree there that's 480 years old, I believe it's gonna turn. And so yeah, you can go and see the world's longest. Yeah, amazing. And then even after it's no longer living, after it passes away, say it's the tree that keeps on giving. That on the left, these are some standing dead trees called snags. They're actually provide important habitat. There's woodpeckers drill holes in them, and then your bluebirds and titmice and other types of what they call secondary cavity nesters will live in those cavities. Bats will live up under that sloughing bark or in the hollows of these trees, and that's actually very important because our bat populations in this country have been decimated by something called white nose syndrome. It's a fungus that gets on their face and makes it when they're trying to hibernate. it kills them. And it's been most of a problem where bats roost in caves. So up in the mountains where they congregate in these large numbers in these caves, it has the perfect temperature and humidity and the congregation of bats that this fungus spreads. But when bats roost in these trees out singly and individually, they're not as susceptible to this fungus. So having this sort of habitat is important for keeping these bat populations around, which are critical. They eat lots of mosquitoes and flies and play an important role. You know, when a log is down on the ground, there's small mammals and reptiles and amphibians that will get underneath that, and insects. And then even the stump hole there, you can see this stump. This is where a tree was, and the fires kind of burned it out, and it goes down into the ground, and that creates a place where things can hibernate. So again, a lot of reptiles and amphibians and small mammals will get underneath the ground, and that's where they escape from fire, they escape from the cold of winter. So at all of its different stages of life, and even after death, the longleaf pine tree continues to give. So longleaf, you know, it's important for provides timber products and revenue. It grows a very straight tree with a dense wood grain, so a very high quality tree for building and for lumber. Make a lot of telephone poles and that type of thing out of it. Wildlife habitat is critical. This is a place where a lot of unique animals live. Recreation, whether hunting and other types of things. Ecosystem services, all the small embedded wetlands and other places. It's filtering our water. It's helping to, you know, recharge the groundwater system that feeds you know, places where we get our drinking water, things like that, renewing the air. There's a lot of cultural values. Using longleaf for longleaf needles have been important for basket making and other things like that. And just the aesthetics. It's a beautiful forest, particularly when it's been fire managed. If you ever do have a chance to get a chance to go up to Sandhills Game Land, which I said is not that far away from here, and drive through, you'll see scenes like this where it's just this big, you know, nice open savanna, grassland. And I would also argue there's just an inherent value to itself. We all often try and say, you know, what's something worth? Why do we care about it? Well, you know, is there some money that's going to come back to us? Is there some resource we can extract from us? And those are important. Those are useful. But I would argue that a longleaf forest has a right to be a longleaf forest regardless of what it does for me or for you, and that there's just an inherent value to having these things be there. So, on the left, you can see a nice example of what, you know, that desired condition. We have these mature trees, not too much mid-story, lots of grasses and wildflowers. That's a meadow beauty type of flower that you see in the foreground. And in fire-suppressed condition, you might see more of this. You got more of these hardwoods that grow up thick. You don't see those wildflowers as much. And but when it's in its desired condition, you'll see. Let me see if I can get that to play. So that's an example of the red-cockaded woodpecker. This is our now a federally threatened species, recently now listed from endangered. That's a young one in the nest. The male you can see has that little bit of red. I'll play one more time. On top of the head, they lose that. The red cockade is actually a little tiny feather behind the ear that the males only flash when they're angry. So that's one of our birds that's out there. This is another one. This is called a Bachman sparrow or pinewood sparrow. And its song is just, to me, it's beautiful because it's a real harbinger of spring. Probably, maybe in less than a month, you know, by the time you get to like late March, you'll start to hear this, one of the first bird songs of the season that you hear in that longleaf forest, and that just tells me, okay, winter is over and we're in spring. And another example, these are some fox squirrels living in an old red-cockaded woodpecker cavity. I mentioned the importance of those cavities. Those two are actually siblings. You can have different colorations of fox squirrels, from black to silver to orange to all different kinds of colors, even in the same litter. So, and I say, just a tremendous diversity of different types of plants, animals, insects that inhabit a well-managed longleaf pine forest. And that's one of the things that makes it so special. But in addition to the things for wildlife, there's a lot of food and medicinal plants, and this is the ways that people have traditionally used this forest over time. There's elements of pitcher plants, one of our carnivorous plants that has some different enzymes that are used. Of course, blueberries and persimmons, examples of fruits that are eaten. Sassafras tea is a common thing. Medicinally, blackberries also is food, and river cane in the middle there. Lots of different things that have some traditional uses. Within the longleaf forest, there's these embedded wetlands, so we call streamheads, bogs, or flatwoods type habitat. Again, when they're managed with fire, they're much more open and more diverse. When they're fire suppressed, they're very thick, have a hard time even walking through that. But some examples, some of the animals that you might see in that habitat. This is a pine barrens tree frog. So it's a neat little guy with that little mask to his face, and he'll be calling, on warm, muggy nights down in these Poquoson areas. Another thing that makes them neat is these carnivorous plants, where you have these wetlands that meet the edge of the upland forest and are managed with fire. You can see scenes like this. These are a sea of pitcher plants at the Nature Conservancy's Shaking Creek Preserve. That's down in Pender County, not exactly right here. But we do have pitcher plants right here in the Sandhills and not far. Venus flytrap, iconic type species, that catches catches insects in its traps, is only found in southeastern North Carolina, a little bit of South Carolina. This is the only place on the planet just within maybe a 90-mile radius of Wilmington. So again, something that is really unique and special to us here and found nowhere else on Earth, even though it has been taken to about every botanical garden on the planet, because this was, as Darwin said, this was his favorite and most remarkable plant, that he commented on. And then one more type of carnivorous plant, show an example of here, if I can get that to work. This is a sundew, a plant that has those little balls on the end that look like some sweet nectar and actually smell like that, but when an insect lands to try and land on it, they're actually sticky. It holds it there. It's going to capture that insect and absorb its nutrients, and it's a strategy because these plants live in a nutrient-poor environment, and so they supplement their food from these insects that they catch. One more type, there's these isolated wetlands, ponds, that again, in the desired condition, are much more open, under fire suppressed. They grow these loblolly pines that suck a lot of the water out. And here's an example. Again, this is a wetland called 17 Frog Pond. This is up in Scotland County, maybe a 15, 20-minute drive from us right here. And you can see just that unique pond structure up on the landscape with all these longleaf around it. And that's a really important place for a lot of different critters, reptiles and amphibians that breed there. The tiger salamander, ornate chorus frog, a couple of rare species. That gopher frog that you see there, you can see that's their unique behavior is it's a defensive posture. Whenever they're startled or scared, they throw their hands up in front of their face like that, which is awfully adorable. Chicken turtles thing. And then that southern hognose snake kind of looks like a cobra a little bit, spreading its head like that. That's just it's a snake that's all bluster and bluff. When you come across it, it's going to spread its hood. It's going to look intimidating. It's going to hiss and kind of move at you there. And but if you still don't go away and try and pick it up, it won't bite you. It's just going to flip over and play dead and maybe barf up a frog. That's its posture. And it's on this. It doesn't actually live in the wetlands, but its primary food is frogs and toads. And in fact, it's what we call a rear fang snake, where they have a fang in the back of its mouth. And the reason they have that is that when they grab a hold of a frog or a toad, the toad will sometimes try and puff up its air sac to make itself too big to swallow like that. And so that little, that tooth in the back is able to pop it like a balloon so that it can then swallow it. And so this is an animal that's dependent upon those wetlands to produce the frogs and toads, which in turn provide its food that it eats where it goes to. So again, just a unique kind of ecosystem. And then just one more I'll point out is Carolina bays, another thing that's unique to our area here. This is an old black and white photo, an aerial photograph. So these are different farm fields. This is a road, a stream that goes through here. But you notice all of these oval-shaped things that are on the landscape here. Each of those it's called a Carolina Bay. Those are a depression and a wetland. Some of them have been drained and already converted to agriculture. Some of them will have water like you see in the picture on the right with cypress. Some of them will be more shrubby and dense. But these are all wetlands that are really unique, and a lot of speculation about how they got started. There's been theories that there was a meteor impact, a meteor shower, and that's what created they're all sort of oriented the same way, and they have like a higher end on one end, a sand rim, as they call it. There's theories that when this was a shallow sea, that those were whale wallows. Someone speculated dinosaur wallows. One of the leading theories is a little less sexy. It's more of that it was just prevailing wind and wave action that created these shapes in these wetlands. But regardless, they've created these things that are unique for us here. So anyway, this longleaf pine forest, really kind of neat, cool place, but unfortunately it is threatened by fire suppression, as we've talked about. Conversion to development in agriculture has probably one of been the biggest things more recently, different land uses. Incompatible forestry practices, as I say, converting to loblolly pines, planting them in these dense type stands, that type of thing. And in some cases, exotic species, invasive things that come in and can invade a longleaf forest. But that fire is probably the biggest thing and one of the things we really focus on. It's these frequent, low-intensity fires. When you think about fire, sometimes in our mind we think about these images from the news from these western wildfires where the fire is just jumping from tree to tree and just consuming the entire landscape. That's not the types of fires that that happen in longleaf. These are low intensity. In fact, I'll show you an example of it in a second. But it controls those competing species that are out there. It creates these snags and stump holes that we've already talked about. It alters the soil chemistry, and it cuts down on ticks and chiggers. But fire can no longer behave as it once did on the landscape. So we need prescribed fire. It used to be when lightning got a fire started or Native Americans were burning, it might burn from one river basin to the next. Now we have roads, houses, farm fields, everything and so we need to be able to maintain, do control burning, and this is an example of what that looks like. I'm sure, like in a period of drought and windy times, yeah, like saying that the fires could burn all the way to the Mississippi River. When back in the time when again there weren't these roads and other things dissecting the landscape there. So you saw in that video an example of what it looks like when someone is lighting. Again, we have trained people that are very experienced that are going to do this under safe conditions. And when that it's not getting up to burn through that lower level of knockback hardwood, or pine, trees are fine. They've got a very thick bark and they will survive that fire. So that's the longleaf pine system. What's the Nature Conservancy doing with the Lumbee tribe? So it's work that TNC is doing in collaboration also with the Sandhills Prescribed Burn Association. The Prescribed Burn Association is basically one mechanism for working with those private landowners like we were talking about before. They take kind of a neighbors helping neighbors approach where one neighbor needs more capacity to help to do some prescribed burning. Other neighbors are looking for more experience of how to to gain more experience, so they kind of be able to put them together and provide some equipment, provide some training, and enable those landowners, sort of the old concept of a barn raising, where you bring the community together to get something done that can't be done themselves. So in the Lumbee community, there is a strong tradition of burning, that they used fire for clearing the land, to hunt, to plant foods for food gathering, clearing fields for agriculture. A lot of the traditional plants that were used require fire to survive. We talked about longleaf pine, but also river cane, sassafras, other things. Managing those forests have been managed for a long time to prevent drought, beetle outbreaks, and catastrophic wildfires. We won't prevent a drought, but it helps to actually the forest to be better conditioned to survive the drought. Talked about ticks and chiggers. So burning has been part of the Lumbee tradition for a long time, and still is. There's a lot of fire being used in the community. And longleaf pine is a key part of the Lumbee culture, where they do a lot of basket making. They're a part of that turpentine industry. You'll see the traditional quilt pattern and other images from the Lumbee that have this shape like that, and it's actually based on, you look at the bottom of a longleaf pine cone, that's what it's based on, is that image that you see from the Lumbee traditional is from that longleaf cones. It shows that strong cultural connection of the Lumbee community to that. So what are some of the ways that the Nature Conservancy has worked with the tribe? So we have what we call our Preserve History Project, where Nancy Fields, a woman who works the Museum for the Southeast Native American, that's a museum that's at UNC Pembroke. If you haven't been there, it's a really great place. She's got a lot of interesting artifacts, well worth a trip there. She's a fascinating person to talk to. But she was looking for the home site of an ancestor of hers 7 generations back named John Oxendine. John Oxendine was a Lumbee, sort of long, interesting history, but he eventually had gotten his freedom after some indentured time, and was making a living as a cooper, making barrows, presumably helping the longleaf industry. Moved to this area here, was one of the people that helped to establish the Lumbee tribe in the area in the 1750s. She had a trail that sort of led her to a place in Robeson County where he settled, but couldn't find where was that place. Eventually, with a little bit of more sleuthing, she figured out it was Donohoe Bay, a preserve that's currently owned by the Nature Conservancy. This is one of these Carolina bays that's just an absolutely beautiful place. You can see it has breeding herons and egrets. You can see there a picture of great egret, cattle egret, and hinga, and their crazy-looking chicks. And so anyway, we brought Nancy out to this place to see where her ancestor, had settled. These are the, ancestors of the same birds that John Oxendine would have seen when he was there, and it was just really meaningful in connection. And we wanted to be able to tell that story of how Native peoples were there long before the Nature Conservancy, and what that meant for the history of these important and special places. So we contracted with the museum to basically research the history of Native American use of several places, like our Callaway Forest, which is a 3,000-acre preserve open to the public in Hope County. Donohoe Bay, as I mentioned, in Robeson County, you just saw those pictures. The Green Swamp Preserve down in Brunswick County, a place famous for its carnivorous plants and orchids and other neat plants that are there. And our Black River Preserve, where we have the oldest cypress trees, black cypress on Earth, that date back more than 2,600 years old, trees that predate, or go back to BC. So anyway, we wanted to learn more about these things. We had an archaeologist from the tribe, Harlan Chavis, who identified several artifacts at our Callaway Forest, including found arrowheads, pot shards, paint rocks, petroglyphs that date back thousands of years, fill in our understanding. So here you can see a few examples. Some of the more recent artifacts, Randolph projectile point, that might have been used in hunting and such. That was actually from 1700, 1800 AD time frame. Fabric stamped pottery, so this would be some pieces of pottery, and you can see that sort of patterning on it. They actually used river cane to help kind of stamp and give it that form that's there. And a paint bowl is not an artifact itself, it's a natural, it's a rock, but it's the red ochre iron oxide that's within it that would be used for painting faces and used in different ceremonial purposes back in the day. Some additional ones found that are a bit older, a basalt pipe that was preformed. It looked like they were trying to kind of carve out and hollow this and turn this into a pipe that could be used for smoking tobacco and other things. That's a adze blade there, and a broken church spearhead that was much older, 3,000 to 8,000 BC potentially. And then also pretty interesting, pretty neat was some of the petroglyphs. There's not very many rock outcrops in the sandhills. So where we had some rock outcrops, if you can see this shape here, this sort of round thing is what he thinks was sort of a turtle shell, and there's a little bit hard to make out, some impressions that very similar to a famous artifact, the Junaluca rock that's up in Jackson County, that you can see a kind of a shape of it here. And then over here, I don't know if you can make out the outline of this thing here, that seemed to be a knife blade, and the red outline kind of shows it on the right there. That was sort of a symbol of a warrior, person in that society. He looks like a chili pepper a little bit, but Harlan assures me that's that's how they're intending there. And so anyway, just seeing some of these petroglyphs that the time period is a lot less certain, anywhere from 1000 AD to as much as 14,000 BC, that these things might date back to. So anyway, learning about how people have been on the landscape in the sandhills for a long time. Another collaboration we had with an individual from tribe, Kevin Melvin. He wanted to replicate the process of making a dugout canoe. Unfortunately, on the tribal grounds and lands that's owned by the Lumbee, a lot of the older and bigger trees are gone and no longer there, and so brought them to some of our Nature Conservancy preserves. You can see Kevin there sort of sizing up a potential tree, allowed him to be able to cut it and carve it out and create this dugout canoe named Wisdom, and that was sort of a really neat process to see him go through and engage the community in doing that, and then put it out for its ride on the cultural center. We're looking to support control burning within the community. As I said, there's a lot of fire culture that still is in the community. There's an opportunity to help support it. That in addition to a lot of fire, it's also the Robeson County is the county with the highest wildfire rate. So a lot of fires that are getting set are also getting out and things like that. And so looking to see, can we help to encourage that burning, so to provide some more capacity for safe and effective control burning in the community, which can include equipment, training, and personnel. And a real kind of neat opportunity, I feel, for blending of indigenous knowledge and culture with modern fire science. So the Nature Conservancy goes about burning in its sort of way, that's done with all of our different equipment and the science. And there's a lot that we can learn from indigenous communities about their traditions, their ways of interpreting and doing things. And likewise, there's I think things that the Native communities can learn from how TNC has put fire on the landscape. So that's an ongoing effort. And the Nature Conservancy is working with some of these other tribes in southeastern North Carolina. So, actually throughout the country, we do a lot of work. But here specifically, we have a collaboration with the Waccamaw Siouan tribe. They have started an initiative they call the Hohe, which is the Siouan word for longleaf pine. And so it's their reforestation program. They actually have an event coming up this Saturday to plant longleaf back on their tribal grounds. They have a very small tribal ground area near Bolton in southern Bladen County. They just did their first control burn on that land to get the land ready for planting, and now they're planting longleaf on Saturday. So this is kind of a great, meaningful thing. And also starting to work with the Coharie tribe, whose interests are primarily more about the rivers. The Coharie River is named for the Coharie tribe, and they have a tight connection and close connection to those important riverways, the Coharie River, the Black River, and other places where the Nature Conservancy works. So, to wrap it all up, basically, in summary, the Nature Conservancy works to protect and restore longleaf forests and wetlands and other important habitats in our region that really make this place special. And this partnership with the Lumbee tribe and other tribes is something we're trying to do, support their efforts to reclaim culture and history, provide job opportunities and other things like that. And then it's also helping to expand the capacity of conservation work, that as we see more partners doing this work, no one organization can bring back longleaf and can bring back our forests on their own, and it takes a collaboration and it takes people working across the landscape. And so we're very excited for this. It's relatively new work for us within the past several years that we've really gotten more deeply engaged in it, so kind of excited to see where it's going to lead to. So with that, I'm happy to open the floor to any discussion, any thoughts, any questions, any answers that anyone might have.
I remember trying to burn off a garden and the fire getting out of control. I think all of us have probably experienced that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a common thing. A lot of people burn the ditch banks and that type of thing. What we're trying to encourage more is like, okay, when you're going to set that fire, let's make sure we got some fire breaks around there. Let's make sure we have some equipment that if things get a little hairy, let's pick the day so we get the right day to do it. So there's certainly ways that we can reduce that risk of getting out. But yes, anyone who burns, eventually there's probably one that's going to get away from you.
How have you found it possible not to be paternalistic, dealing with the Lumbee and the other Native American tribes?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that has plagued, frankly, the conservation community and a lot of sort of the broader white community is that coming in with some white savior complex or coming in saying, we have the answers, we need you to do it our way. And so we try to be very intentional about being humble that we're not here with the answers. We're here to work with you. We're here to learn from you. We're here to work in collaboration with you. And it's important that a lot of these projects that are initiated are driven by the community, that it's not TNC doing this. We come through, we provide some ideas. Here's some things that we think could be great, could be helpful, but it has to be, from the tribe side saying, yes, we want this, we want to do this, and we want your support. Yes, sir.
Here, I'll let her go first.
Is there any way for a private citizen to obtain seedlings to restore longleaf trees that they may have lost?
Yes, so the North Carolina Forest Service has a nursery where they sell longleaf trees. Some of the local nurseries will sell, if you want just a few individual trees, you can go to a nursery, they might sell it to you in a pot, that kind of thing. If you're looking for a larger scale to plant more of a forest, again, go into the North Carolina Forest Service. I can provide you with some contact information. And I got to see if the timing is right, but I remember I mentioned that Prescribed Burn Association. They had about 7,000 longleaf that they were distributing to different landowners, and actually a lot of them in the Lumbee community, as well as elsewhere. I don't know if they have any of them left, but I can check for you to see if you needed a handful of longleaf to get some for you. So yeah, let's talk afterwards, and I can see if I can give you some contacts to get a hold of some trees. Yes.
One of the most prestigious honors is the Order of Longleaf Pine. We have some people here who are members of that prestigious organization, preserving the longleaf pine.
Yeah. So who's has received the Order of the Longleaf Pine here today? Okay. Very nice. That is a distinguished honor bestowed, I believe, by the governor, and that is one of the highest civilian honors in the state, is to be given the Order of the Longleaf Pine. Also, our state toast starts "Here's to the land of the longleaf pine, summer land where the sun does shine." And so it is definitely woven into our culture in many ways. The Tar Heels for UNC. That's a name that I think had some connections to the turpentine industry and people in Longleaf and with tar on their heels there. So yeah.
Excuse me, how long has the Nature Conservancy been in existence, and other than money from Bob, where do you get funding?
Yeah, so as an organization, we've been around since the 1960s. We've since grown to be one of the largest nonprofit environmental groups that's out there. We are operating in 70 countries, I believe, something like that, in all 50 states. And so we get our support from generous donors. Private donors are an important part of it. We also go after a lot of federal grants And so, and state grants, so various types of grant funding for both buying land. One of the key things that the Nature Conservancy does is we buy land to protect it and either, maintain it as a preserve or get it in the hands of a state for game lands or a state park to, make it available to the public. A lot of that comes from these sorts of government funding and then sort of private foundations. So yeah, so there's sort of multiple sources that we pursue. Certainly in this time, a lot of questions about the federal funding side of things. We have some grants that are currently frozen and such, and so it's a bit of a time of uncertainty for funding for us and other environmental organizations. But yeah, thank you for that question. It takes a village, and it's in fact all of those things, those private donors and the government funds that are important. Yes, sir.
I'll just say, as a Lumbee, thank you for what you do. I appreciate you because I love my land. I love how I grew up on it. And my grandfather still sets fires in the yard and he doesn't watch them. So I'm going to teach him some of this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for that comment.
Anything else? Tom? Jeffrey, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Isn't it wonderful to know what's going on in our backyard? Absolutely superb. Two things, two events. This afternoon at 2:30, Resident Association, ice cream, and a new event. John is the president, so he has pardon authority. Anybody who comes gets ice cream and a pardon. Secondly, the next lifelong learning event. It's going to be very different, so you have to remember. Dr. Richard Burnett, who was a professor of theology at Erskine Seminary, is coming to us. And he's coming on the 25th and the 26th. 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 25th, that's a Tuesday, 11 o'clock on the Wednesday. And he's going to talk about his element of expertise on the confessing church. The confessing church was the single public pushback in Nazi Germany. Some of you will know the name Bonhoeffer, ran the seminary. Niemöller, who was a pastor who stood in his pulpit. He had been a U-boat submarine commander in the First World War, stood against Nazi Germany completely. The price that the confessing church paid was tremendous. A goodly number of their folk ended up in the camps. But they were firm, they were straight, because the state church had compromised. The state church immediately came under the swastika. The confession of the confessing church was Jesus is Lord. And if Jesus was Lord, and they said that every Sunday publicly, if Jesus was Lord, Adolf Hitler was not. And so I invite you to come for 2 sessions in which, if you're a Lutheran or a Reformed church member, you're going to rub your tummy very happily. But you're going to see a group of people who decided that the importance was not loyalty to the state, but loyalty to something which was much greater.
One question about dates again.
The 25th and the 26th. That's a Tuesday and a Wednesday. Of March. Of March. Of March. Of March. Again, my friend, thank you. Thank you for coming. Friends, go in peace.